I just did an amazing video just now, but I had to stop and take a phone call at Noelle. She called to tell me about something. And so, yeah, I ended up losing the entire video. And I was literally almost done. Patience. But anyway, I have my shirt on. I don't think you guys have seen this. This is my shirt that Noe got me. It says, "I'm just here for the booze." I figure since today is what, the 29th, might as well get this shirt in because soon it's going to be no longer in season to wear this, right? This video is not about booze or ghosts or any of that, but it is talking about the home prices in Tacoma. And the home prices in Tacoma are still the cheapest in the region. And one of the things that is interesting is one of my friends who wants to move here was talking about how home prices he was reading something that said home prices in Tacoma are going down. And I said, I don't see that, right? Like, I follow this stuff quite often. I don't see it. I don't know where he got the information from, but it could be that they're talking about the region. And let me talk about that for a second, because one of the big issues here is when something happens in a small town in Pierce County or someplace close to Tacoma, they'll say Tacoma, right? So no matter what the situation is, if there's a crime or an event that happens, they will say in the city of Tacoma, blah, 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 blah. And that's not the case, right? It's not the case. So a lot of people here get upset because it makes Tacoma look bad, even though people already have a bad view. It makes it look worse than what the reality is, right? A lot of times the crime has nothing at all to do with folks in Tacoma. It has to do with some other place, some other city. And when it comes to Seattle, a lot of times when you hear the Seattle area, that can have different meanings. It could be the Puget Sound region, which includes Everett and Bellevue and Seattle and Tacoma and all the other points in between. Or it could just be talking about Seattle and King County, which includes Bellevue, right? It could be talking about that. It kind of depends. So you have to really read between the lines and understand what is being meant and what's being talked about, because it could have drastic meanings all over the place, right? Well, when we're talking about Seattle, the home prices there are kind of stagnant because, again, remember, Seattle had this big ballooning price for homes, and it almost seemed like a game because, for one, I think Seattle really tries to be another San Francisco, and it was kind of like, let's chase that title to be the most expensive and brag about how expensive it is to live here, which I don't understand why people would want that. But it backfired because the prices in Seattle start to tank and drop very quickly to pretty much make the correction that it needed because there was over speculation, right? So as a result, the only hot market has been Tacoma, and it has been for quite some time. Now, if you look at other places, other cities, their home values are higher than Tacoma, right? But people aren't just breaking their necks trying to buy from those places because of different things. It could be when you start looking at cities towards the east, you're basically in snow and ice land where it gets a lot of snow, a lot of ice. Also, there's not a lot of stuff to do. When you look at Everett, with all due respect, there's not as much to do in Everett as it is down in Tacoma. It's just the facts. When you look at Bellevue, it is so expensive that you need 5 people working just in order to survive. Just expensive. You know what I mean? So, and then Seattle's expensive too. So Bellevue's even worse, Mercer Island's even worse than, say, Seattle. And then when you count all the little suburbs that the techie folks live and where they have their little hangouts and stuff, it's even worse. So the darling of the area, so to speak, the ugly darling, is Tacoma. And when we talk about this particular article, is talking about how Seattle home prices tend to be driven by this hot city. And that city is Tacoma. Tacoma by itself has carried the region in terms of the average home price increasing. When we're talking about the area because sometimes they look at metro regions or they look at big blocks. You have to be careful what you call a suburb and what's not, because people tend to splice words all over the place. But that's kind of how it's looked at. They looked at the Puget Sound region. And when you look at King County, which is Bellevue, Seattle, you look at Pierce County, which is Tacoma mostly. And then when you look at Snohomish County, which is Everett, basically those counties rose by 7% in terms of home values. Most of that, however, is in Tacoma. Those other places did add a little bit to it, but most of that is in Tacoma. Why? Because the average home price, even up in Bellevue, or actually up in Everett, is still $425,000. That makes it out of the range for most average people. If you look at the average household in America, the entire country, a lot of people cannot afford $425,000 on average. Now, that doesn't mean up in Everett you're not going to find a house cheaper than $425,000 or much more expensive, because you can. You can find multi-million-dollar homes up in Everett. But the average home is around $425,000. Now, here in Tacoma, where there's a lot less of the home supply, because the stock of homes is much less, we have less supply here than any other city in the entire region. And the home prices here are now at about $385,000. It's $384,500. So about $385,000 is the average price of the home here in Tacoma. Now, can you find homes for cheaper than that? Yes. Can you find homes for much, 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 much more than that? Yeah, there's some homes here that are insanely expensive. Several $1,000,000, right? But the average they're talking is around $384,500. Now, think about that for a second. As of today, $384,500, but just a few months ago I was talking about this and the average price was in the $360s, and just a little bit before that, $340s. All within this year, it went from that range all the way up to where it is now, $384,500. And so Tacoma has literally carried the area at 0.5%. That means 0.2% is being shared between Snohomish and King County. Pierce County, mainly Tacoma, has grown by 0.5% in terms of home values. So it's carrying the entire region. When people look at the average price of homes in the area, they're mainly saying, wow, look at the price increase, and that's due to Tacoma. Now, they're saying nationally home prices have seen an increase of 3%, right? Nationally. A 3% increase. So Tacoma, so now Seattle and Everett and all of those are growing slower than the home price is growing slower than the national average. Hasn't always been the case, but Pierce County is almost double that. And so part of it is, and I've even said this to Noel, is obviously due to it being a lot cheaper. But one of the big things is accessibility and availability. In Tacoma, there's a lot more bang for your buck than what you're going to get up in Seattle or Bellevue. And what's interesting to me is Bellevue, they're getting the light rail tunnels and all this stuff being built and all the hoity-toityness. And so there's developers developing all these big mega projects near these transit stops. And my question is, who's going to fill those apartments? Now, there will be people that will. Definitely. But at the same time, it starts to be a title. Because why would you spend so much money for a home in a place when you can spend much less someplace else? It just doesn't make sense. And so you're starting to, some people will, obviously. Some people will. But there's a lot of people that vote with their feet and they're saying maybe Everett. But Everett traffic is horrendous. It's horrendous. Yes, they have a commuter rail line going up to Everett, but traffic up there is bad. Traffic coming from here up to Seattle is also pretty bad. But there's a lot more options down here in terms of getting to Seattle than what you're going to have up in Everett. And you have more of a city feel and vibe down here in Tacoma. You just do. And the prices of homes are a little bit cheaper. So if someone can afford a $400,000 home on average, they're going to be better set here in Tacoma than they are up in Everett, even though both cities are similar kind of in price a little bit. Still, you're going to be at 400,000 above the average price of homes here in Tacoma. That's not going to be the case up in Everett. So you're going to get more bang for your buck down here. And the jobs down here are probably going to pay comparable or maybe more than what you're going to have up in Everett. So that is one of the reasons why the area is blooming. Another thing is, so it's cheaper than all the other places, obviously. There's more stuff to do down here. The park system is probably the best in the entire region. I mean, it just is. There's several national awards that have been awarded to Tacoma in terms of its parks. The Dune Peninsula was a major game changer. Then when you look at the arts program, we're talking double-digit millions every year is being raised for different art programs. We're looking at Tacoma Creates. It's a huge thing. No other place, including Seattle, can compete. If you add it up, Bellevue, Seattle, and Everett, the money they spend for arts, it's still going to be less than what Tacoma has at its disposal. So it is making a huge seismic shift. Now, can you get paid more money up in Seattle and Bellevue? Absolutely. Hands down. So when I go to the parking garage, I see a lot of expensive cars in that garage. A lot of very, 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 very expensive cars. Now, this is a commuter garage that's basically for the Sounder train that takes people all the way up to Seattle and back. So that tells you that even though folks who can afford a very expensive car, they may not have been able to get that car had they lived up in Seattle. But down here, their ends can be a little bit better, right? So they're able to afford a much better life. Or maybe that money's not really a concern for them, but they still would rather save much more money living down here, commuting every single day, right? So you're seeing a lot of tech people choosing to live down here in Tacoma. And a lot of business professionals are choosing to live down here in Tacoma. Just take a look at one train that comes in, and there are several that comes in, and you see the attire of people. Those are all suits and what have you people coming off the train. It's a lot of them. So you're starting to see that. One of the other things too is I wouldn't be surprised if now Tacoma is bigger than Spokane. The two cities, for the longest time, Spokane was much more larger than Tacoma. But Tacoma has been catching up in leaps and bounds. Now they're only just a few thousand people apart. I wouldn't be surprised if Tacoma is now number 2. They think that still Spokane by 2020 will be bigger, but given the amount of people and the volume of people, it probably has passed it. One of the things too is if you go downtown, it's not the same as it was when we first moved here. When we lived up in Seattle, we would come downtown to Tacoma, even during the weekday, and it was pretty dead. I mean, there were people parked, at various places and working in the buildings and whatnot. But when we're talking about people walking around downtown, you just didn't really see it. You just didn't see a lot of cars. That has changed. And I would even say the first year we moved here, it was kind of like that. That's starting to change. Downtown is now packed with people walking all the time. Now, is it like Seattle? No, not even close. But you're seeing a lot more people walking around downtown at different times of the day. There have been times when I've seen crowds of people and Noelle and I is like, what's going on? Is there like an event? And it's not. It's just there are more people coming downtown. There are more things to do. And there's more people moving to the city. You're starting to see the city grow. And so to me, it doesn't surprise me that the population growth is growing here and that the home prices here are growing here because it has a lot of room to catch up. What is surprising is the fact that Tacoma is carrying the entire region as far as home values. I don't think anyone ever really saw that. And this isn't some sort of seasonal fluctuation. This is not some sort of correction. This is a steady rise in terms of just the values of homes here. So when I tell people, now apartments on the other hand is a different story. Apartments here have exploded in price. They're very expensive. You still may find a deal, but it's getting very pricey. In order to get an apartment, very, very pricey. So that's one of the things that have changed. My sister even looked at things and she was like, I can't afford those. Things that she could have afforded way a few months ago. Same places now she can't. So home values are definitely going up pretty quickly. Apartment values are going up even faster. I would say for folks that are looking to move here, probably relatively soon. If you're wanting to come to an area where you're going to be able to easily afford a home, I would say now would be kind of the case. We're at that point where Seattle was before the recession. There were so many people that bought homes during the recession up in Seattle, and they were happy about it. When the recession ended, the prices became so expensive that those people wouldn't have been able to afford it. Now Tacoma is in that same situation. We're not in a recession, but Tacoma's in that same situation where the prices right now are very, very good. Very good. But if people don't move quick on it, it's going to be impossible. We're the only area typically where you're going to see bidding wars. Bidding wars were common up in Seattle, not so much now. Down here, there are bidding wars. There are people who are definitely paying much more than what the house has been listed for. So those types of things are going on here because you have much more of a bargain. So I would say for folks who are looking, definitely, there's not too many places now in Tacoma that I would say stay away from because things are rapidly changing. Are there some areas of the city that are a little worse than other areas? Absolutely. There are some areas that have historically had problems and they still do. There are other areas that historically had issues and currently don't. One of them, if you look at Ash Street, I think it was Ash Street, it was one of the cities that was what made Tacoma notorious. Is now one of the safest places in the city. But anyhow, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, I will see you. Take care.